How can higher ed use Salesforce's Experience Cloud to build an applicant portal? Building forms and fields. Colleges and universities want to use Salesforce's Experience Cloud to deliver an applicant portal. So what are the necessary considerations to think of when building the forms that are required as part of the applicant portal experience? Let's take a look at a few examples. Upon logging into the applicant portal with Salesforce's Experience Cloud, an applicant may initially land on an applicant portal homepage. In this example, Olivia can see that she's in the status of profile created, and she's being invited to click this button to start her application. When she clicks this button, she may be taken to the first page of her applicant portal experience. In this case, we can see that Olivia only is seeing two pages, the My Profile page and the Enrollment Information page. As she completes the My Profile page, and continues to the next page. So now we can see that more pages may be displayed to Olivia, such as her enrollment information page and her academic history page, recommendation page, and so on. In this example, the applicant is an undergraduate applicant, and therefore she is seeing these particular pages that are part of her applicant portal experience. But what if we needed to display different pages to this applicant? What if perhaps the applicant was a master's applicant instead of an undergraduate or bachelor's applicant? In this example, we can see now as a master's applicant, the candidate is also being asked to provide their employment history as an additional page in the applicant portal. This was not part of the undergraduate applicant portal experience. If we flip back, we can see that that page no longer is rendered to this particular candidate who is an undergraduate or bachelor's applicant. So one of the important criteria that we need to be able to control on the page or form level is being able to decide which pages or forms are actually displayed or rendered to a particular candidate based on configurable criteria. But what about on the actual page level? What about on the fields themselves? What are the important criteria that we need to be able to control? Let's take a look at a few examples. Before we do so, let's take a look at this slide here. When it comes to fields and forms, what are the conditions that are important to control? On the form level, we've already seen the example of render, where we need to be able to control what forms are actually rendered in an applicant portal experience. What forms display on the screen to a candidate and when are they displayed? We need to be able to control that on the form level for render. Equally important, we'll see in just a minute, how that is important to control rendered on the field level. We also need to be able to control required, auto-populate, read-only, and record selection. Let's go take a look at a few of those examples. First off, on the field level, let's see an example of rendered. Here we can see a field that's asking about military background in this use case. If we check this box, we can then display additional fields. We can render additional fields. If we uncheck that box, we do not render those fields. That's a good example of rendered logic. We've configured in the form the ability to decide whether those fields should be rendered or displayed to a particular candidate. Next, let's look at required. Here we can see examples of fields that are required. As the applicant is filling out this page, these fields will be required before they can save and complete this page. In this example, the required fields are being denoted with a red bar. The logic of when a field is required has been built into the form. While we're here, we can also see examples of auto-populate. Here we can see that when Olivia logged into the portal, certain fields were pre-populated with information we already had, such as her first name, her last name, and her email. We did not ask Olivia to retype this information. The form is configured with the logic within it to decide which fields to pre-populate with data we already have in the CRM system. That is an example of auto-populate. Read-only. Let's look at an example of read-only. Here we can see that this candidate has indicated they're a U.S. citizen. Therefore, the next field, country of citizenship, is auto-populated with the United States of America and cannot be edited. They cannot edit this field. It is set to read-only. Another example of read-only logic may be when an applicant is accepted into a program, after which their application may no longer be editable. In this case, this candidate can still change their program or their term, but But once they become admitted, now we can see that they can no longer edit those fields of information. That is a common example of when fields should be set to read-only logic so that they can no longer be edited. Finally, let's go take a look at record selection. Here's an example of record selection. In this use case, as the candidate selects their campus, they're being asked additional questions such as the level of education, let's say bachelor's, and then their academic program. In this example, all of the undergraduate programs that this particular institution offers. Notice, since this candidate is a bachelor's candidate, the programs they can select are only the undergraduate programs in the CRM system. If this candidate selects to be a master's applicant, so the programs in the pick list change to only reflect the master's records in the system. This is an example of record selection. We can control the pick list values that are being displayed in a pick list, only selecting the appropriate records out of Salesforce, out of the CRM system that should be displayed in this particular pick list. That is an example of record selection as a pick list value. Another example of record selection might be as a type-ahead search. In this use case, the applicant is being asked to provide their previous high school information as well as any previous university or college information. If this candidate begins to type their high school information, in this example, Deerfield High School, the system is displaying all of the possible matching records in the system that might meet this criteria. And then the applicant can select the matching record that is actually their particular previous high school. In this example, I'll select Deerfield High School in Deerfield, Illinois. We can see more examples of auto-populate read-only, where the address is being auto-populated but is not editable by this candidate so that they can verify perhaps that this is their particular high school that they attended. That was an example of record selection where when I was typing the high school name, only high school records were being searched. Here below, if I were to type Deerfield High School, we can see that there are no matches because in our system, there are no colleges or universities that are named Deerfield. If instead I had typed Pima, so then the system can find a match, in this case Pima Community College, and the candidate can select that particular record and that can populate the values again in this particular form and allow this candidate to select that record. So those are examples of how we can build navigable pages and forms as part of an applicant portal, as well as control the fields that are actually displayed in those particular forms. So how do we build those pages? Let's go take a look. Within our tool, we have the ability to build pages or forms on Salesforce's Experience Cloud. Clients can choose to create new pages or modify existing pages. In this example, we can see the existing pages that are part of the applicant portal. If we were to edit the My Profile page to add an additional field, we can click the Configure button. This takes us to the form building tool that allows us to create and modify pages. Here we can see the existing fields that happen to be on this page at the moment, first name, last name, and email, and so on. If we wanted to add an additional field to the page, we can drag and drop from the left to the right. In this example, we can see that we have access to the contact object with the birth date field, and we can drag that field right onto the form. And now that field may be on that page. But recall that we want to control the logic of rendered, required, auto-populate, read-only, and even record selection in certain examples. So if we look at the field birth date, if we click on that field, here we can see what kind of configurations we have control over. For example, as we scroll down, we can see that we can control the rendered logic. When is this field actually rendered and to whom? Is it always rendered to every applicant? Is it never rendered to any applicant? Or is it rendered only on certain conditions? If we set the conditions, we can set Salesforce style logic to say that perhaps on a particular object, in this example, let's say on the contact object, when a particular field, in this example, we can say that when the citizenship field is not equal to United States, so then render this field, then display this field. And we can add additional rows of logic. We can say and 2 or 3, adding additional Salesforce style rendering logic of when a field is actually rendered on a page for a particular candidate. We have the same level of control not just over rendered, but over when a field is required, when a field should be read only, for example, perhaps again when they become an admitted student, or when a field should be auto-populated with existing data that we already have and perhaps allow them to edit that information. While we're on the field configuration, notice that we can also include information such as instructional text on this field or hover text over the field. We can even change the label of the field. So while the field may be called birth date in Salesforce in the CRM system, we might want it to say, what is your birth date on the applicant portal. Notice that on forms, as you're building pages, you have access to the entire Salesforce database. If we were to click this data set, we can see that we can add additional Salesforce objects, both standard and custom. We have access to all of the Salesforce objects. You can select a particular object that you're trying to grab a field from that you want to display on a particular page. Once you grab that object, you then can select the fields from that object that you would like to display or collect from a particular candidate. And once you say that, then you will have those fields in the data set and you can drag those fields onto the page. You can mix and match objects on any form and collect data and create records on multiple objects from an individual form. Once you've created your pages and set all of the logic on the individual fields, you have the option to go into Experience Builder, and from there you can click on a component and you have access to add any page that you've built in our tool to this particular component. That is how higher ed can use Salesforce's Experience Cloud to build navigable forms and pages inside of an applicant portal experience.